Hi everyone and welcome to ODTalk's online education series. Today's presentation is The Bots Are Coming, How Emerging Technology is Changing Our Businesses and Our Lives, presented by Andrew Jorgensen of Mindstream Analytics. Today's presentation will be recorded and available for viewing on the ODTalk website. Please go ahead and put your questions into the questions box at any time during the presentation. They will be addressed during the Q&A period at the end of the webinar. So welcome, Andy, and thank you for being here today.
Thanks very much, and welcome everybody. Hope you're enjoying your morning, and this would be a great opportunity to have some lunch at your desk and work through a couple of new emerging technologies. So first, let me introduce myself. Have you seen me? You probably haven't seen me because I've been gone for about 4.5 years now. My last known whereabouts were the 2015 Oracle Open World. But even though you haven't seen me, I'm still here. I'm still a senior partner with Mindstream Analytics. I still have a lot of experience in the EPM and BI world. And I used to run the Hyperion SIG way back when there was a Hyperion SIG. But now I am, for the last 4 or 5 years, experiencing my new role as a venture capitalist. I work with the Salt Lake City Angels. I also am involved with venturecapital.org, and I'm an LP with Boom Startup. And why is this relevant? It's because I have about 70 software portfolio companies that are in this emerging technology space that we're going to be talking about in this webinar. And for some strange reason, I can only seem to invest in companies that have blue logos. But as you can see, there's quite a few that run the spectrum of the different things we're going to talk about: artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things, and some advancements in emerging tech. So when we look at these emerging technology companies, we often use a term called being Ubered. And I wanted to describe what being Ubered is because it really reflects how fast the pace of disruption can literally disrupt your business and put you in a place that you never even thought to see coming. So our big example that we always give to people is in 2014, using Uber or Lyft was practically non-existent, and taxis and rental cars dominated the business traveler market. And in just 4 years' time, Uber and Lyft had supplanted taxis, supplanted rental cars, and left those businesses very much in hard financial straits. And it really goes to show that you could be next, because there's a lot of these technologies that are just upending people who've been in business for 100 years and with seen no change in how they do business. So what's happening? McKinsey is predicting that we're going to be really, really AI driven. If you're looking at your business and seeing this is really a human-driven business and there's no way an AI is going to be able to upend us, you're probably wrong. There's lots and lots of applications of AI that can do very, very simple tasks now, but they're being trained to do more complex tasks later. And Brianna Patel really put it out there that this is what's known as the fourth industrial revolution. We're changing the way we do literally everything. And if you get a chance, Pricewaterhouse has a great overview page called 4IR, and it really goes into detail on how humans and machines are becoming interoperable and interdependent. And this can be evidenced anytime you look at a teenager with a phone in their hand. You can really see that they're pretty interoperable and interdependent at this point. But has anybody seen the new Terminator movie preview? It's not quite there yet, but we're getting there. I'm not saying it's going to be Skynet, but my machine's not going. Go. And we've now crashed the webinar. Sorry, folks. Let's get you back.
Andrew, we seem to have lost your audio.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Okay.
So just to re-hit this point, because everything's going to go wrong on this webinar, whether I like it or not, the sharing economy is disrupting build versus buy decisions. In essence, capital spending itself is under threat because to build a hotel, you have to, buy the land, break ground, build the hotel, staff the hotel. And as you can see, in just a few short years, Airbnb has as much available space as the top 5 hotel rooms combined, hotel chains combined. The next thing is underlying technologies like AI and machine learning are just upending the formerly stable retail business. So instead of going to Sears or Kmart or Target or JCPenney and walking around and choosing what to buy, Amazon is basically telling you, hey, here's something you might like. Hey, here's something that other people buy. Hey, here's something that other people buy in tandem with the thing you just bought. And just that simple advance is getting rid of retail. Shopping centers, malls are feeling the pain, and just a simple algorithmic change is fueling Amazon's growth. Any manual process. So we talk a lot about things that are robotic and routine and manually done. They're just being replaced. These robots are already being deployed in the field. They do everything from weeding to applying fertilizer to picking crops. And it's underlying a big change in the agriculture market. If you look at the number of farms between 150 and 2,000 acres, they've dropped dramatically, and 2,000 acre and up size industrial farms are growing dramatically. And that's because the smaller farms can't afford the capital spend to buy these robots, but the bigger farms can. And then anything that's involving risk and return is being targeted for a premium harvest. So you're seeing, after years and years of low interest rate being offered by the banks, you're seeing all these sort of non-banks emerge that they don't have any brick and mortar, they don't have any physical presence, maybe they have some ATMs, but they're able to offer premium interest rates because they don't have all that underlying infrastructure to handle. And if you've seen it, it's not just banking, it's going into wealth management, it's going into investing and trading. It's basically nobody is safe anymore. We're in a position where your business is going to change from what it is today, no matter what. So why do we think this is happening? Well, there's huge investments in fourth industrial revolution technology. This is across the board at a rate of 140 billion a year. That's unprecedented. There's really no other industries that have seen this amount of capital being deployed on them. Even healthcare doesn't have this much being thrown at it. And you can see the number of companies that are going from the early stage investment through acquisition on IPO is just growing and growing every year as well. So we're going to talk about three of the technologies that are really transforming business. I picked these three for the webinar because these are the ones that Oracle is addressing the most directly. The other things that go into this bucket are cloud, Internet of Things, 3D printing, drones, so on and so forth. But the ones that are affecting us in our jobs are these three: AI, automation, and blockchain. So let's talk about what artificial intelligence actually is. Most of the time when we hear about AI, it's really just glorified machine learning. Machine learning is taking anything that is repetitive and routine and giving the machines the data and them being able to predict the answer for themselves. So you've probably seen this now with things like photo recognition. You could point your cell phone at any object and it'll tell you exactly what it is. And that works great if I'm pointing it at this lovely shopping cart. But AI takes these things even further. AI allows the machine to both ask the questions and determine the best answer. So if I identify this as a shopping cart, I might decide, well, it's worth hitting. But if I identify this as a baby carriage, then I'm going to drive the car in the other direction. So we've reached a point where you as a human would have made that same sort of, decision while you're driving. But now we're reaching the point where the car can make that determination for itself. So let's talk about what Oracle is doing with machine learning and AI. These were all announced at Open World last month. I'm not sure if any of you were able to attend. Account reconciliation is one of the things that it's manual, repetitive, and it's sort of a low value add for your accounting staff. So their goal right now is to automate about 70–90% of high volume recognition, and any sort of exceptions is what your staff will focus on. This is already sort of happening where people are doing really, really high volumes of transactions. Traders on the stock market, credit card settlement between your retailer and the credit card companies or the debit card companies. And it's not just a batch at the end of the day. It's happening almost real time and immediately as the transactions come in. And for your business, this is going to come into the EPM suite, where they're going to have this auto reconciliation for you. You can either do it as a period end or as a continuous process as you go through the month. The next thing is automated consolidations. This is something that Oracle's putting forth as a stepping point in their continuous close, but basically it uses the idle time of your system processing to do the consolidations almost constantly. So every time you put new data into the system, it's going to detect any sort of idle time and go to get you the most updated numbers all the time. Now, what does this mean? If you have long time consuming consolidations that take an hour or more, this could be something that it has to be configured by you, so you're not jamming up your system. But for the most part, they want it to be sort of autonomous and just dependent on time availability. The next thing that they're doing is, along the machine learning front, is predictive planning. There were actually several different use cases of this announced at Open World, but auto forecasting. based on prior results, based on the time series. If any of you are in retail, it'll take like the 445 into account. These are basically sort of not zero-based. They're preceded based on previous results and current trends. Another example that they showed at Open World was the workforce planning. I believe they actually have a demo of this online somewhere, but it allows you to predict salary costs based on the different people within your workforce and where they are sort of in their career evolution. So let's move on to the next topic. It's robotic process automation. And these are the bots that you're looking for, hence the title of the webcast. And these are literally everywhere. They're showing up in marketing. They're showing up in different sort of back-end office tasks. But basically, the bots are teaching computers to perform routine tasks and also initiate triggers to other bots to have them perform routine tasks. So you can go sort of back and forth and chain together multiple steps in any sort of manual process. So a lot of bots programming is using virtualization because it allows you to scale up and scale down. These different sort of scripting languages and APIs to connect different systems together. But essentially, the difference between this and sort of your AI-based things is it's very, very rules-based. The bots are taught to obey a command, and if there's any sort of confusion, it just stops and fails. It doesn't try to find its own solution to the problem. But when you combine the remote process automation with AI, that's where you get the autonomous behavior. So this is your self-driving cars, your autonomous drones. This is where you're sort of bringing together the robot, which is doing the sort of turning the wheel and pressing the gas pedal and doing all those different tasks, and the AI, which is making that decision between the shopping carriage and the baby cart. So there's three types of bots. Probots are the ones that are sort of the automated, process-oriented. There's actually another kind of bot that people are less familiar with called a no-bot. And those are bots that go out and do research for you. They'll go out and find information out of a topic, and they will present it to you based on your requests. That's probably one of the most emerging sort of pieces out there, but there's several different companies out there that are focused towards the education space, corporate training, that are going out and using these no-bots to conduct research and train people. And then the last, probably the people are most familiar with, are chatbots. And chatbots are the ones that you're interacting with on websites or frequently asked questions or help groups. They're the ones that are just kind of giving you the answer. And if you can sort of make a case that like Alexa and Siri and all those are your typical type of chatbots, although they are a little bit more powerful. So let's talk about what Oracle is doing with their bots. They have announced EPM bot, which is now a conversational interface. And I realize the text is a little small here, but as you can see, this sort of interaction on Slack with the user and EPM bot. Is there any consolidation running? No. Do you want to start one? Yes. Consolidate actual for fiscal year 18. And then the bot responds, consolidation started. Do you want me to let you know when it's done? And then you get a choice to say yes or no. So that's really the future of where we're going with that sort of interaction, where instead of a user navigating through menus and picking selections, you just kind of either talk or type to the bot, and the bot does those tasks for you. it's not going to eliminate administration completely, but it's certainly going to make some of the routine tasks more automated. The next thing that was announced at Open World is along the lines of regulatory reporting. They're putting auto tagging. This is actually a combination of bots and machine learning for level 4 XBRL. And right now they're working on levels 1 through 3. So that should really help for you who are public companies or subject to any sort of XBRL compliance reporting. This is going to really help you get this job done every quarter. So the last thing we're going to talk about is blockchain. Blockchain is better known as distributed ledger technology. And for lack of a better term, think of it as a giant spreadsheet. It's just a big row of, it's a big grid of rows and columns that are set up for you. A lot of people think blockchain is the same as Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. It's not. Blockchain is the underlying technology that allows you to have cryptocurrency, but it's not cryptocurrency. They're not one and the same. So think of it like you're able to have a public spreadsheet that everybody has access to. And at the end of the day, the columns are defined and the rows are secured so that each row becomes another transaction that meets those criteria. And once the block is verified, it's publicly, well, it could be private too, but it's available for everybody distributed across thousands of computers. So if you think about if I went back to trying to cook the books, right, trying to forge something in my records, there's no way to do it because I could only falsify one. I couldn't falsify the 1,000 of them that are out there because I wouldn't even know where to find them. So here's where Oracle is taking on blockchain. And this is another sort of thing that it's been around for a while. They offer Oracle blockchain as a platform as a service. And this allows you as a company to build your own sort of blockchain applications using the Oracle's platform. It's very, very scalable. They're improving their capabilities with both virtualization and sort of interfacing with different APIs. They've got a really nice roadmap around this. And let's kind of talk about some of the applications that are out there right now. Some of the early adopters are supply chain management. So this would involve sort of a chain of custody from, say, your manufacturer all the way through to your retail shelf. You really have an idea of where your products are moving, how they're moving around. This goes into logistics as well. But it's basically a great way to have that chain of custody of high value items. Another place that this is coming into play is within the billing process and also assets and liabilities. So let's take a typical house transaction, right? If anybody's purchased a house or apartment, you've probably dealt with something called title insurance or a title search company or liens against the house or research into any sort of other things that may have happened, say asbestos in the home. So all these industries, right, if there is a giant spreadsheet out there that lists who has the title, anytime the title changes, if there's asbestos tagged to the house, if there's any sort of liens against the house, and it's in one place that anybody can reference, there's really no need for those title companies anymore. They're basically doing the legwork to collect these things that are all on paper somewhere, filed away. But if all of a sudden you can just dial into a database and get that information, there's really no need for them Training and education. This is a great thing for certifications and diplomas. So there's and testing as well. So there's things such as vouched IDs, real IDs that give you sort of a digital certification that says you are who you say you are. And then when you take your test, when you take your certification exam, then that is tied to your unique ID, and then that diploma is tied to you as well. So it'll become harder and harder for people to sort of fake their credentials going forward. International transfers, especially between people who don't necessarily know or trust each other. This happens most often with wiring money, especially to some sketchy countries overseas. This allows international transfers to work a lot more effectively. The same thing with healthcare records. Everybody's talking about sort of a universal healthcare record where you can carry it around with you and people can find it. This will allow a little bit more security and privacy around it, but it also is going to supplant a lot of the medical records that are just sitting in printed out folders on a shelf somewhere. And then lastly, I want to give a big shout out to Gary Kersey over at GE. They're actually using blockchain for their intercompany settlement. They announced this over at the Open World session that they gave last month as well. All right, so a couple things that we didn't touch on. First is drones, and everybody kind of thinks of drones as those little things that you get to fly around and follow you while you're hiking and get to survey your neighborhood. But there's at least 7 different companies right now that have successfully piloted the passenger drones. Now, these are 2 to 4 seat drones. The one you see in the picture here is actually the one made by Boeing, but there's a number of different companies out there that are doing it. The current ones are all gas powered. There has been some experiment with battery powered ones, but unfortunately the batteries are just way too heavy to get these things going. So as these things enter the marketplace, you're going to see the sort of fossil fuel based ones enter the market first. But if we do have a breakthrough with battery technology, you'll see more and more adoption there as well. The next thing, 3D printing. There's a couple of companies out there. One of them is called Icon. Icon is able to print up this house in less than 24 hours, and it costs less than $4,000. So they're actually built entire neighborhoods now where they've been able to spin these things up. Just think of, instead of the 3D printer that you have in your home that does things with plastic, this is actually doing this with concrete, or sort of a concrete substitute that's pretty sturdy, but it's also very insulating. These things are amazing, and if you get a chance, just Google 3D printed house, and you'll see a video of how fast they can build this thing up. The next thing is along the virtual reality front. So you may have heard about the Lion King movie that Disney made last year. And it's sort of a live action remake, but it's not really live. It's all animation. And when they were interviewing the CGI people, they actually said that they had to make the things look a little fake because it was too unnerving how good the quality of the CGI was in the movie. So they actually had to take it down a notch so it looked a little less real, because the audience members were getting sort of freaked out by how good the graphics were. And this is manifesting itself in sort of nefarious ways too. There's something called deep fakes out there where you can go out and have Donald Trump say whatever you want him to say, even though it's not him who's saying it. It's a computer generated version of him, and it's being voiced over by a imitator or voiceover actor. And this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem because it's happening not only to political figures, but it's happening to Hollywood celebrities and just about everybody else out there. It can happen to anyone. So that's it. I'm very sorry for the technical difficulty there. I managed to crash my PowerPoint 3 slides in. But at this point, I'll open it up to any questions.
Okay, so far we do not have any questions, but we can give it a minute. If anybody is frantically typing in a question right now, we'll wait just a minute. We'll see what happens.
I probably lost everybody when I blew up PowerPoint.
Okay, we have a question. How do you see AI affecting data unification and mastering?
What was the last part?
How do you see AI affecting data unification and mastering?
Is it mastering was the last word?
Yes.
Um,
and then they have added to that mastering large disparate data sets.
I don't see any sort of unified data source. What I see happening is lots and lots of disparate systems being connected through APIs instead of sort of batch transfers. So less and less import-export, more and more API-connected systems. Everybody's sort of having access to their own sort of domain or stake, and just talking to each other more. And part of that is going to be AI-driven. Some of that's going to be bot-driven, but that's sort of trigger, request, response, collect. And the sort of why I don't think we're ever going to get to that sort of universal approach is because once you start going there, we start running into these governance, privacy, and security concerns that prevent it from really being sort of that huge data set.
Okay, the same person who wrote the last question wrote, but connecting the data so that you can hydrate a profile is what I'm thinking of.
Can they elaborate on a profile of what? A profile of an individual? A profile of an asset? I guess that.
A person, brand, category. Oh, a product brand category.
Product brand category. Not sure. Haven't really thought about that. I'd be happy to take that offline and talk about it a little bit more. But I think on the surface, when you're talking about inanimate objects, there's probably a lot less privacy, security, and governance concerns. So I think you can go further with that. But I still think when you talk about things like a brand, you have supply chain issues, you have your marketing is totally disconnected from your manufacturing, is totally disconnected from your sort of retail channel. So there's lots of different sort of stakeholders that in play that aren't necessarily talking to each other now that you could harness together with APIs.
Okay, next question is, any ideas on the regulator's view on bots or AI in performing regulatory reporting?
Within the tagging process, I think at this point, when XBRL just first came out, it was kind of onerous, and a lot of companies were outsourcing it to like companies like Bound and having it just done for them because it was so time consuming. But I think at the end of the day, the regulators would rather companies own their data instead of farming it out. So I think they'll look at any means to make it less onerous and still be as accurate as a positive. And I think they would also see having companies do it themselves be a positive as well.
Okay, you may have already answered this one. The next question is, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future of AI?
Great question. And the answer is both. There's a lot of things out there that are net positives that we're already seeing. If anybody's looked at Google Analytics in a while, they've gone from sort of you finding things yourself or having to navigate to them making sort of intelligence suggestions for you. So think about if you were closing your books and you had all these variances from budget and variances from forecast. Right now, you're probably going through some method to identify them and explain what those differences are. Where sort of the next step in the evolution is they tell you what differences that you should be looking at, and also, if you use a no-bot, they can actually do some of the research to tell you the reasons why. So on the flip side, where I'm sort of negative towards AI, is really pushing some of these things to market before they're fully tested, right? And let's go back to the self-driving vehicles, because that's probably the most contentious and has the most ramifications on us as a society. So if I'm going to put a autonomous tractor out into a farm, it's running around a confined grid that I don't really have to be worried about it running into anything other than maybe a fence or a scarecrow. If I put a autonomous vehicle on the road, then I have to be worried about that, shopping cart versus baby carriage scenario. But to take it even a step further, if I flood the world with autonomous vehicles, then you have to realize that 20% of the world's population drives something for a living. So it could be, driving Uber or Lyft. It could be driving a truck. It could be driving a tuk-tuk. But literally 1 out of 5 people make some sort of living by driving something. And what do you do with all those people? If all of a sudden their jobs have been taken away, you have 1 in 5 people who have nothing to do, or they have to find another job. I mean, that literally could create a real crisis in our world economy. That happens.
Okay. Last question, it looks like. Does Oracle have chatbots? Can they be modified to point end users to controlling support or IT support?
I'm not sure if Oracle has a chatbot. I haven't seen any on their website, but there are third-party tools out there that you can buy to have your own sort of chatbots for support. The best way to implement them is to start with your existing sort of help desk frequently asked questions database. That's the best way to sort of get things implemented. There is a little bit of programming and scripting required, and the machine kind of has to learn along the way. But there's quite a few tools out there right now. Some of them are deployed on people's websites, but some of them have incorporated them into their ticket system for support, and use that way. If you've called a bank or called a retail outlet to return something, you're probably getting routed through the phone equivalent of a chatbot, which is, press 1 for this, press 2 for that, give us your credit card number. You're never talking to a human along the way while you're getting your support. And these web-based ones are essentially doing the same thing.
Okay, that was it for questions.
All right. So my contact information is below. If you have any other questions, or you can tweet me or send me an email. Karen will be sending out a recording of the webinar, and if anybody wants the slide deck, we can get that to them as well. Okay,
great. Thank you so much for being with us, Andy. Thank you all for attending today, and don't forget the presentation was recorded and will be on the ODTUG website. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.